Hello everyone, my name is Vivek. I am a software developer. I make videos about containers, Kubernetes, Go as a programming language, and sometimes about software engineering in general. So, if you have been liking the kinds of videos that I make, you should consider subscribing to the channel and you should follow me on Twitter as well. In this particular video, we are going to write another part of the Kubernetes custom controller that we have been writing, and that controller exposes your application automatically outside of the Kubernetes cluster. So for example, let's say if we have this Kubernetes cluster and if we deploy an application in this particular Kubernetes cluster, our controller, and we named it expose, this controller is going to expose this application automatically so that someone from outside of the cluster can access this application uh, easily. Now in one of the last videos, what we were able to do is we were able to create service for this particular application. So as soon as a deployment is created, this controller is going to create a service for that particular deployment. But in this particular video, we are going to look into, once service is created, how do we create ingress resources. So after service is created, we want to create ingress resources to actually expose this application. Now if you are not very comfortable or confident about ingress resources, I would highly recommend another video that I have created that is about ingress resources. So to make ingress resources work on your Kubernetes cluster, we will have to have an ingress controller installed on the Kubernetes cluster, and I have discussed about this in the video that I talked about. So first of all, before even creating ingress resources, our, let's say, our prerequisite or our expectation is that an an ingress controller should already be running on the Kubernetes cluster. So I already have a 3 node Kubernetes cluster, as you see here. Let's just go ahead and try to install an ingress controller. So in our case, we are going to use nginx ingress controller, and this is the deployment steps. If we click on DigitalOcean, let's just go ahead and try to install it. So as soon as we apply this manifest, we should have an ingress controller installed on the Kubernetes cluster. So if you see here, a namespace was created and a deployment was created. So it simply means that now we have an ingress controller in this particular Kubernetes cluster. So if we get all the things from ingress-nginx, we should be able to see ingress controller running, and there should be a service of type load balancer. So if you see here, we see a service of type load balancer, and we also have in nginx ingress controller here. Now we should wait for this service to have external IP, but yeah, let's move forward with other things, and meanwhile this service is going to get an external IP. Now let's just go ahead and open the source code repo. So this is exactly where we left our project in the last video, and if you see here, we were able to create the service successfully. Now all we have to do is we have to create the ingress for the service that was created. So let's just go ahead and write a function named, let's say, create ingress, and this is going to take service. So we are going to pass svc is going to be of type core dot service, and it is going to return an error whether the ingress creation was successful or not. Now let's just go ahead. Like we created an object for service, let's create an object for ingress as well, and then we can use client set to create the ingress. So ingress is going to be of type. Now Kubernetes ingresses are from API version networking. So we will have to, so if you see here, we used core v1.service because we know that services are from core v1 API group. But in case of ingresses, they are from networking API group. So let's just go ahead and try to exactly figure out the API group for uh, ingresses. So Kubernetes ingress go doc. If you see here, this is the type that we are talking about, and this is the package where the ingress type is available. So let's just go ahead and import it. So let's call it networking v1, and it is going to be called as netv1.ingress. Now that we have very simple, I would say, empty ingress resource, what we can do is we can use client set to create this ingress resource. So this particular create ingress function is going to need client set as well. So client is of type kubernetes.interface, and we are going to call client.networking v1 dot ingresses and the namespace. So namespace is going to be the namespace where we have created the service. So service dot namespace and then create. So create expects context and ingress and create options. So let's accept context as well. So context and pass context here. The second argument is ingress itself, and we also have to pass create option. Now it returns ingress colon error if, and we can return error from here. So if error is nil, then we are going to return nil. Otherwise we are going to return error that we got from dot create. Now we can directly return create ingress, and let's pass it context and c dot client set and obviously service that we have created. Okay, so I think this should make sense, uh, but we have not specified any property for ingress here. We have just specified empty ingress resource. So let's just go ahead and try to do that. So here is what we want to do. If we installed an application, let's say nginx application, and in that case, we want to create a service named nginx and an ingress resource named nginx. Similarly, if we created a deployment named nginx-1, we want to create a service named nginx1 and an ingress resource named nginx1. And the ingress resource that we are going to create, they are going to listen on, or they are going to forward the request on a specific path, and let's have that something like this. So this is where this ingress resource this is the path for which this ingress resource is going to forward the request to. So we can say that we are using ingresses path based routing. So we would be listening to, or we would be looking for this particular path resource, and if a request comes to this particular path resource, we are going to forward that to this nginx service, and eventually service is going to forward the request to the pods. So this is what we want to do. And if we look into an example of ingress resource from Kubernetes documentation, this is what we have to achieve. So we have to somehow specify rules, paths, backend, and things like that. So let's just go ahead and try to do that. So we will first have to specify name, and let's name the ingress uh, to what the name of the service is. So it's going to be svc.name, and namespace is also going to be what the namespace of service is. Now that we have name and namespace, let's just go ahead and try to specify spec. So inside spec, if you see here, we have to specify rules. So rules, and value of rules is going to be an array. So this hyphen in YAML means an array. So rules is going to be, if you see here, slice of netv1.ingress rule, and inside ingress rule, what we have to specify is slice of ingress rule. So we are going to enter slice of ingress rule, and inside ingress rule we have to specify host. So we don't want to specify host as of now, because we would be accessing it with the load balancer IP address. But if you have a DNS mapped to your load balancer IP address, in that case we can use host as well. So what we will have to do is we have to specify ingress rule value, and ingress rule value is going to be of type networking v1 dot ingress rule value, and here we have to specify http, and for the value is going to be http ingress rule value. If you are not able to understand this, what I would recommend is we can just go ahead and try to look into this type ingress. So for example, if we click on spec for ingress, this is the type of ingress spec, and that is what we have specified in here. So networking v1 dot ingress spec. If we talk about rules, this is the type of rules, slice of ingress rule, and that is what we have specified in here. So this is the value, this is the type of rules, that is slice of networking v1 dot ingress rule. So if you look into this particular struct type, you would be able to figure things out. So for http, we were looking at this particular example. So for http we have to specify paths. So, and the value of paths is again going to be, if you see here, value of paths is slice, and here we have to specify http path. Now we want to do path based routing, and this path is going to be the name of the service or the name of the deployment. So we are going to say fmt dot printf and slash %s, and %s is going to be svc dot name, and path type is going to be prefix. Now if you don't understand what exactly do we mean by path type prefix? Again, I would recommend checking the video out where I discussed about where I discussed about ingress resources in detail, and this would make sense. Okay, now that we have specified path type, we have to specify backend. So this particular ingress resource is going to forward all the request at this particular path to this particular backend. So let's just go ahead and try to specify the backend, and backend is of type ingress backend, and it expects service. So this is the service, and we have to specify name of the service, and we know the name of the service is service dot name, and we also have to specify port. Now we know that we are going to test this for nginx, for nginx uh, application, but and in that case we can clearly use, or we can simply use 80 like we did for the service resources. But as I said, this needs to be improved, and maybe we will improve this to actually figure out which particular port pod or an application is listening on. So for now I'm going to specify the port to be 80, but yeah, we will have to improve this. Okay, so it looks like we have the correct ingress resource, and we are creating it after the service has been created. So let's just go ahead and try to run this. But before that, let's make sure that we have we have everything running properly for the ingress nginx controller that we have installed. So this service got the external IP, and the pod is running as expected. So yeah, things are the way they should be. Now I'm going to run go build to actually build this project and create a binary out of it. Okay, now let's just go ahead, and I will be looking for kubectl service hyphen and test one namespace, and we will be watching the ingresses as well from test one namespace. Now let's create a deployment. So kubectl create deployment hyphen n, or let's create namespace first. So kubectl create deployment hyphen n test one, and name of this deployment is going to be nginx, and this is going to run nginx image, and it's pretty much it, I think. And as soon as we created the deployment, if you see here, the service was created automatically, and we also have the ingress resource. So if we get the ingress resource from test one namespace, if you see here, we will have to this particular ingress resource is going to route the request at /nginx to the service nginx on port 80. So let's just go ahead and try to do that. So we will have to get the external IP of the of the load balancer type service that we got when we installed ingress controller. And if we try to access that, and we are getting 404 here, and the reason is, so if we look into this particular ingress resource, when we got a request add path slash nginx, this particular request is being eventually forwarded to the pods, the nginx pods that are running. So kubectl get pods hyphen n test1, and this pod is listening on port, but the request is forwarded at path, or I would say resource path slash nginx, but this pod listens on or responds to the request at root path. So we'll have to rewrite the target or rewrite the resource path to slash. So even though we are requesting slash nginx, and ingress resource listens for slash nginx, eventually we want to call slash resource path for this particular pod. So we can do that by adding this annotation. So if we talk about, yeah, this is the annotation that can be added to specify that we want to call root resource path for the pod. So let's just go ahead and try to do that. So object meta, we want to specify annotation, and it is of type map of string and string. And here we go. Now if we create another, so let's rebuild the project and run it again. So go build, we will have to look into this error, but let's forget that as of now. I'm going to delete everything from test1 namespace. So when we delete all resources, ingress is not included in all. That was the reason ingress resource was not deleted. Now if I create a deployment with name nginx1, so if we look at our code, this particular deployment or this particular application is going to be exposed at path nginx1. So let's just go ahead and try to hit enter. We should have a service as well as an ingress created. Now that we have this thing, we are going to query nginx1, and here we go. We are able to access the nginx deployment that we just created. Now to make sure that we are exposing the applications correctly, so for example nginx1, uh, when we access slash nginx1, we are able to access nginx1. But if we, let's say, deploy another deployment named nginx2, in that case, if we make request to slash nginx2, in that case request should be forwarded to another pod, nginx2 pod. So let's just go ahead and try to create that. We should have two services now and two ingress resources. Now if we get all the pods from test1 namespace, so nginx1 is forwarding the request to this particular pod, and nginx 2 should or is forwarding request to this particular pod. Now, to verify that, what we are going to do is we are going to change this welcome message in the pod 2 to make sure that slash nginx2 is actually forwarding the request to nginx2. So kubectl exec -it test 1. Okay, and if we talk about this welcome file that we see here, this is at location user share nginx and html, and we have to modify this index.html file. So we don't have vim here, app update. Okay, and let's change the title to welcome to nginx 2, and this should also be changed to 2. And if you see here, we are changing this in the pod nginx 2. Now if we just go ahead and we hit the URL for nginx 1, we get welcome to nginx 1. But if we refresh for nginx 2, if we see we are getting welcome to nginx 2, it simply means that we are able to achieve what we discussed about. So for example, if we have an application, let's say named app, and if we have another application named app1, this controller exposes these applications automatically at path slash app and slash app1 as soon as they are created. So as soon as these applications are created, someone from outside of the cluster can access these applications at these resource paths, and this is what we wanted to achieve. Now if we talk about this code base, obviously this is not production ready, I would say. For example, if we talk about, we don't necessarily need this deployment labels function, and we are also not handling deletion of these deployments. So for example, if we talk about these services and ingress resources, these services and ingress resources were created automatically because we created a deployment resource. So if we delete that deployment resource, these services and ingress resources should be deleted automatically as well. So that is another thing that we can achieve, but maybe in the later videos. But I think we were able to do what we wanted to, that is exposing an application automatically. I would obviously push this code again, updated code, to the GitHub repo. So if you want to look into that, if you want to maybe make some changes, you can totally try to do that. So yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about in this particular video. Thank you for watching. If you have any question, just let me in the comments section. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.